Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. I'm Joel Goldberg, and my guest today, quite frankly, I don't need an introduction for, and that happens every now and then. I've also said many times before that every now and then we'll get a sports guest on the program, sometimes a retired athlete. I try not to ask or pull from Royals players because they see me enough. But it's fun sometimes to see them in retirement. Had Alex Gordon to start this season. Had a guy like Kevin Youkilis in the past who's transitioned into owning a brewery out in California. But for the most part, it's been people in the business world and entrepreneurs. But the message is always the same. It's about people and leadership and culture. And my guest today is someone that I've known for a long time, been really fortunate enough to work with for a long time. And for anyone that watches our baseball coverage, and you see me doing those interviews at the end of a game after a win, and always known for the Salvi splash, the Gatorade bucket dump, which happens quite a bit. Those interviews don't just magically appear. I think I could probably go up and ask guys to do it. And that unfortunately happens in other markets where you have to pull and claw and scratch and claw a little bit to get those interviews. But we're fortunate enough in Kansas City to have an unbelievable media relations staff that is able to set that up, be a conduit between the players and the media, the broadcasters. And my guest today is someone that has been doing this for a very, very long time. He is in his 43rd, I believe, year of doing it, and the last, although I don't think he's going to go away forever. I'll ask him about that in a moment. Mike Swanson is the Royals Vice President of Media Relations and has a long and storied career. I could go on and on about the details. We'll do that during the podcast, but I mean, this is the guy that has had to figure out how to mesh with players, management, media from all walks of life and tie it all together. And that is not an easy thing to do. And he has done it gracefully for many years. And he is getting ready to retire. And it's being talked about all over baseball, whether he likes it or not. And so I'm happy right now to be joined by Royals Vice President Mike Swanson, who I don't remember if I've ever called him Mike before, but everyone in baseball knows him simply as Swanee. Swanee, it's been a swan song, a goodbye tour, which is pretty unbelievable. And I'm sure for you, unbelievably humbling.
Yeah, overwhelming, humbling. Thanks for the kind words, Joel. Yeah, it's been, it's really been hard to quantify in my brain. I made the decision in June to let it be known that I was going to retire only because I didn't want to. I love this organization so much. And I love this sport so much that, I didn't want to leave Mr. Sherman or Dayton or anybody shorthanded when the season ended and just walk out the door. So I wanted to let people know. And, when you do this for as long as I've done it, you just keep doing it and you don't expect anything. You don't even expect that you even got anybody's attention doing it. You just keep doing it and you do your job. And, we don't hit walk-off home runs in my business. We don't we just don't do anything that's has to do with the game other than, the work part and behind the scenes. And that's what we've always been. And what I've always been is a behind the scenes guy. And to go to each city that I've gone to this second half of the season and the adoration and the recognition that people have given me has really blown my mind, to say the least, because I told Renee, my wife, once that, everybody wants me to write a book, which I may or may not. I don't know. I know I'll have some time on my hands, but I don't know if I'll get to that part where I just want to sit down and write something. But, if I ever did, I said I would title it Diary of a Background Singer, which she says that won't sell any copies, which she's absolutely right. But it's the job. That's what we do. When I get that player for you post game, nobody sees me. Just grab the player, get them over to you, and you interview them. And that's kind of been my whole life. And I've enjoyed every minute of it because that's what I trained for and that's what I want to be. So to see last night, they recognized me here in Baltimore, not a public recognition, if you will, but the whole PR staff came down on the field around BP time and gave me a gift and a card and had my name up on the board and took a picture. And it's just been remarkable to see that I actually did impact some people, and I did have some success at this over the years.
Well, I mean, I've always said too, and I haven't been doing this as long as you. I've been in the business, I think, 27 years. But if you make it this long, And especially if you make it in one place this long, and you've been in one place now for a long time, and all your spots you were in for quite a while, it means you're doing something right, because they'll force you out at some point. And so obviously that has been the case when you're known by one name. And anyone in baseball, except for maybe some rookies or some players from the other league that we don't see, they all know who Swanee is. The players talk, the broadcasters talk, so everybody knows that. And so you're a part of it. I think what people maybe wouldn't understand, and even me, I don't know what your every moment of every day looks like, other than I think it's chaotic, and some days are better than others. And you're also part of crisis management when something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong, and hopefully it's not anything too bad. We've seen everything from minor stuff to tragedy, and you're essentially an on-call doctor at any moment to help work that out. But there's so much, I know, to your job beyond managing your own staff, of having to bring everyone together, right? If somebody wants the general manager or even the owner, they're going through you. If somebody wants a player, they're going through you. If a player wants something involving media or something, they're going through you. If MLB Network or ESPN or Channel 41 in Kansas City, and oh, by the way, let's have some game notes ready and all the research done, and on and on and on and on and on. Do you enjoy all of that? Or maybe not anymore. Maybe you're ready to put it to bed a little bit, but do you enjoy the chaos?
I think you just said it best. Yeah, I did enjoy the chaos, and I will enjoy the chaos over the next the remaining weeks of the season, because it's what I signed up for. And I think, though, Joel, that a lot of people have asked, why now? You're still, quote unquote, you're still at the peak of your game. You're not slipping yet, or however people want to phrase it to me. They know they're talking to me, so they say it in phrases and words that are probably not the most complimentary sometimes to other people, and probably not the most politically correct. But you know what I'm saying, and I think part of it is because if getting to the ballpark at 4:00 and dealing with the players and dealing with the media, being that conduit, and then watching the baseball game, if that were my day, you know what, I could probably do it for a few more years. But to get to the ballpark at 10 or 11 in the morning for a night game, and you put in an 8-hour day before the first pitch is thrown, and then you have 3 or 4 hours still to go, and you do that over 43 years, I think the reality of it just hit me this summer that, I really haven't had much of a life outside of baseball, and I'm still healthy enough that, I can still, with old man aches and pains, I can still figure out a way to play golf. I can still play with our dogs. I can still, work in the yard and do things around the house. And I can do all this out of the game. And I can't ask baseball for anything more than it's given me over 43 years. And I don't think baseball can ask me to give much more than I have. I think that's the whole genesis for why I've decided to do this. But there's a chaos every day. It's a controlled chaos, we like to say. But yeah, you nailed it with every request we get. We have players as recent as, this week where, somebody questioned a scoring call, because that's what players do. And so you find yourself in the middle of that one too, because it's somebody's judgment, and you deal with it, and you deal with it with a smile on your face, and understand that whatever work you did from 10 or 11 in the morning until 7:00 at night, or early morning on a Sunday or a day game until 1:00 that day, whatever happens, your day is capped off with a Major League Baseball game. And if you can keep that in perspective, if you can understand whether your team's playing well or not playing well, I'm going to go out on a limb, even though we've had some success with teams that I've been with. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that my lifetime record's probably under 500. But the fact that I've been able to be a part of a major league game every day for 43 years just blows my mind. And now it's time to maybe go sit in the stands and have a cold one and sit with some friends and enjoy the game from a different perspective.
Yeah, I don't think you're going away, but the workload will go away. I certainly hope so, and I expect that'll be the case. I don't think you'll ever disappear, because you love the game and all sports, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But I want to hit a couple other elements of this job, because I think while your job is different than mine, the similarity and this is what I talk about so often on this podcast, is at the end of the day, it's about people and taking care of people. And I've learned that from so many. You're lucky enough to work for Dayton Moore, who gets that, I think, as much as anyone that I've ever been around. He's the one that taught me about culture and treating people the right way. And I think I always treated people the right way. I think you treat people the right way, but you come to learn that when you're dealing with all these people from different backgrounds, my goodness, you were the PR guy for the Dominican Republic one year in the World Baseball Classic, and
twice, actually.
I know you
yeah.
Twice. That's right.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, your Spanish isn't that much better than mine, which means we can pick a word here and there and understand a little something. But it still comes down to people. I'm wondering how much that resonates with you and how long it took you to get to that point of understanding it.
It took a little while. As a young guy coming up, you think you got all the answers. You've been handed a Major League Baseball job, and you beat your chest and go, here I am. I'm one of 30 who get to do this. And then you start seeing, you start realizing that the requests that people make of you, they're not for themselves. They're for their whatever publication or television station or network or MLB network as it got going and things like that. And you realize the only way, and it's something I preached to the players since Dayton and JJ and Scott have allowed me to go out and talk to minor leaguers. The only way our fan base is ever going to get to know, I won't say Salvador Perez because Salvy's so easy to get to know, but say Michael A. Taylor, who's a very quiet guy, Jackson Kowar, guys I've spoken to in the minor leagues. The only way our fan base is really going to get to know these guys is going to be their cooperation, their ability to talk to these people who I'm trying to set interviews up with, to be able to talk to you. Because if you're not accountable before or after games, the fans are only going to have what they witness on the field as their perception of the player. And some players are really, all players are really competitive. Some show up more than others. And if you're one of those guys who just looks so fired up out there, you might be kind of tough to pull for, if you will. But you might be a pretty good guy. We need the people to know you're a pretty good guy. And it's something that I've stressed with these guys. And it was a maturation process for me. And then once I realized that and figured it out, that's what I've been trying to teach to other people, because to our players and staff, because ultimately you want the fans to really adore these guys. You want the fans to pull for these guys. And, if you get on the message boards or you look at the social media stuff, and it hurts sometimes when you see what some people say about a guy because of his performance only. And I know these guys as people. And so there's a trend, and I think, Joel, I don't want to, bury anybody with the other 29 clubs, but I think life in general right now, and this is an old timer talking, I think life in general, people, because of technology, because of everything being handed to people right now, the ease at which you can gain information, I think people are trying to find easier ways to do their jobs. And not put in the time that I put in over my career. And I'm not saying I invented that. My God, I was with, I know Rick Vaughn, Jay Horowitz, John Blake, PR legends in the game. And they all put in the time. But I don't like seeing somebody where their first inclination on a request is the word no. Let's if the request is doable, say, yeah, I think we can get that done. If you think the request is a little bit more of a stretch, let's at least give them a maybe and try to chase it down. But let's don't just start off with no and then work our way backwards. And I think that's something that I mastered many years ago. And I think that's one of the reasons people have enjoyed working with me, because I try to get done what the request is. Some are easier than others. Sometimes I have to come back and say no, but at least I make the effort. And that's what I hope that continues in our game after I'm gone.
Yeah, and it will, hopefully. A lot of it is what's been passed down. And, I wanted to ask you, I want to get back to the beginning for you, but I'll jump ahead, because I'm always amazed everywhere we go when I see those media relations staffs gravitating towards you. And I know you're going to say, well, that's just the old guy, but a lot of them have learned.
You just answered my question.
I know you well enough, but but getting past the self-deprecation, maybe some realism there too. I don't know, but look, I find myself the same way now with some people in the media, having done it as long, and I've at least done it long enough that I'm seeing people that are young enough to be my kids, just like you are, and so you have something to pass on. And I'm always amazed when we go to a Minneapolis or to these other places, and you see these media relations people all coming over and maybe just catching up, but sometimes picking your brain, and that has to be a really impactful moment or moments for you to know that you can pass on what you've learned from some of those greats.
It's again, I go back to, I think, my opening remarks with you. I don't really consider myself as anybody special. I don't consider myself as being smarter than anybody else. I just don't. I mean, if you know me, and yes, I'm very self-deprecating because I've never claimed to be the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree and never will be. But I think because of relationships and because I have tried to do the best problem solving you can do when presented at situations in baseball PR, I've had a lot of the younger media relations people and PR people come up to me in the last few months and thank me, and that's just been weird. But it does make you go home at night and think, you know what, maybe you did some good, and not just for your club, but maybe somebody else's club too. And that's pretty cool. I've got enough people around me, 26 players in uniform, manager, general manager, and training staff and equipment guys. I mean, all buddies here who have the perfect way of putting me back in my place so I can't get too cocky about it. So, but when you're sitting alone in your room in the hotel at night and you think about, the conversation you had earlier that day with somebody, you kind of smile a little bit and go, yeah, if they thought that I taught them something, that's pretty cool. And and the friendships you make, I mean, it's ridiculous. We're all, the one thing I stress with my staff, and one thing I've told other clubs who they wonder if, they're doing the right thing or getting it done properly or whatever. I wonder sometimes, because of the hours, because of the stress that comes with this job, I mean, doing what I've done for 43 years has got to be in your DNA. It's got to be something that you really, truly want to do, because some people just aren't cut out for this. I mean, to do this 162 times plus a 6-week spring training, and just some people can't do it. And I mean, one of the things that I try to stress to people who are in the business, and I kind of alluded to it a couple minutes ago, you're one of only 30 people in the world who gets to do this position. The position I hold with the Kansas City Royals, I'm one of only 30 people in the world that gets this job. And I'm not talking about Japanese baseball or Italian baseball or Dominican baseball. I'm talking about Major League Baseball. And if you can respect that and understand that and realize how far that you've actually come and had an opportunity to be a part of this, those bad days aren't as bad as you thought they were, because you can really put it in perspective and go, wow, you know what? This is pretty dang cool.
Yeah. I think about it every day. I mean, the wins are sweeter and the losses as painful as they can be. And, I got to talk about them. You got to walk into the room and find someone to speak to the media after the toughest of losses. And that can be painful. And I just sit back and think, somebody pays me to talk about baseball every day. You know how many people would like to be sitting in the dugout before the game or walk? I mean, this is cheesy. I've never told you this, but when I walk off the field after a home win, and fortunately we've been back on the field the second half of this year to do that interview, I actually try to allow my feet to feel the grass, because first off, you're not going to feel a lawn like that anywhere else. And there are people looking down that would just kill to switch spots with you. And it's so easy to take it for granted, right? I mean, that's your office, Swanee. It's been your office, whether it's Kauffman Stadium or, San Diego, Arizona, Colorado, or anywhere on the road for 43 years. And it could be very easy to take it for granted.
Absolutely. And I try not to. And even, more so now in the last 3 months, knowing that some of these ballparks I'm visiting right now, I'll never see again. And some of these people that I'm saying hello and goodbye to, I'll never see again, because it's just one of those situations where your path might not cross. But I'm trying to take it all in. But the thought that I've had, I mean, the players that I've worked with over my career, the the games I've witnessed, the places people have asked me to go from Major League Baseball. I mean, World Series, All-Star games, WBCs. I mean, to put all that in perspective and try to understand what the hell just happened over these last 43 years just blows your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a magical ride. So I want to go back to the beginning and well before I knew you, but this was in your blood. I mean, you talked about DNA and you grew up watching a mother that was in the sports world. So I'm wondering what a young Mike Swanson, I'm hoping you were a better athlete than me, but most of us that have gone on to be in this game and not be playing or in baseball operations side of, and most of those GM types have played the game, maybe not as much anymore actually, but some of them just went to Harvard or whatever it is. But in my world, in your world, usually we weren't good enough to make it to another level, but yet you've been in this game and in sports forever. So what kind of influence was your mom to that? And tell me about your start in sports.
Well, you know, my mom worked for the Kansas City A's when we moved to Kansas City in the late 50s. And then Charlie Finley bought the team and fired everybody, which is what Charlie Finley did everywhere he went, including firing players and managers and such. But the Kansas City Chiefs, the Dallas Texans moved from Dallas to Kansas City in 1963. And Jack Stedman, who was the general manager of the team, came to Kansas City in advance of the move. And he was looking for people that could just work in the front office, and because they weren't going to move anybody up from Dallas other than the football personnel. And Bob Wachter, who was ticket operations and stadium operations man with the A's and was fired too with my mom, was reached out to by Jack Stedman and, hey, can you get us some people to, you know, who work in sports or want to work in sports and be a part of this organization? And my mom got the call to come over to the Chiefs in '63. And, you know, you mentioned playing sports. I played baseball every day possible, broke windows in our house because some days I didn't have anybody to play catch with. And so I had to throw it against the house. And, you know, I'm breaking windows and Dad comes home and says, another one, huh? You know, he says, maybe you need to work on your arm a little bit. And, you know, stuff like that. But I was in love with the sport of baseball, but football kind of slid in the side door because of my mom's work with the Chiefs. And in 1969, I was given an opportunity by the equipment staff with the Chiefs to go to summer camp in William Jewell College up in Liberty. So I was basically, you know, I laugh because when you say the word water boy, that's how many movies have been made over the years. But you think of Bobby Boucher. I was pushing Gatorade, not H2O, but you know, my job was to make sure guys were hydrated on the field, make sure that all the equipment was stowed after a workout, and make sure that practice gear and uniforms were cleaned and ready to go for the next day. So, I mean, it was a pretty intense few weeks in William Jewell in 100-degree weather. And they let me do that for 4 years. And the last 2 years, I got to travel with the team, you know, and my first year in camp was the year that they ended up winning the Super Bowl. I did not get to go to New Orleans for the Super Bowl because they took everybody and their brother, which is fine. I mean, you know, I was just at the time, 15-year-old kid. But as time went on, I mean, I got to be on the sideline in games and in places that I never, ever thought I'd ever see again. I mean, this was just like a dream, having no idea what was in my future. And then in 1972, January 73, George Toma, who I had also, one of the other jobs I had was to mow and seed and water the practice field on 63rd Street under George's tutelage. And one day he asked me, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, you know, I mean, as much as I love the Chiefs and love being around here, I kind of got to get away from Mom. You know, and my dad at the time was in construction. He was selling buildings, steel buildings, prefabricated steel buildings, and building them. And my junior year of high school, the summer of my junior year, he took me out every morning at 6 a.m. and I was helping him build buildings. And wow. I can't believe a couple of them in Kansas City are still standing because I helped build them. But, you know, wiring rebar together and getting it in the ditch, getting the ditch witch going and digging a ditch to put rebar in to pour concrete. I mean, that's when I decided, yeah, this ain't happening. God love my dad, but this isn't happening. And so I told George that, I'd love to work in baseball or something. And George introduced me to Bob Weir's, and they were actually moving the Kansas City Royals from Municipal Stadium over to then Royal Stadium. And I moved a ton of boxes and crates and everything over to the new ballpark. And he asked me if I wanted to intern. And I turned it into a 6-year internship in and around college. And it was the time of my life. I mean, 73 was the year George broke in September. And, I was just a year younger than George and a bunch of the guys, the young players. And so you'd hang out, and it was just ridiculous how things fell for me. And then it ended up that was going to be my livelihood.
At what point were you traveling or working with Keith Jackson? I know that you were, and you for many years, even now, in some off seasons and some fun trips, which seem like partial vacations and trips to Hawaii to do college basketball. Very smart. But I know that you've always had that love for just sitting courtside or sitting by the action and uncovering some of those nuggets that make those of us broadcasters better. So how did you latch on with the Keith Jackson and so many of the others over the years?
Well, I'll back it up to a gentleman by the name of Ike Pearson, the late Ike Pearson, who was the statistician in Kansas City. If there was a sporting event that took place in Kansas City, Ike was in charge of the stats crew. And while I was doing press box PA for the Chiefs after I left the clubhouse or the locker room and went upstairs, I was doing the press box PA for Bob Springer during the game. And I sat next to the stats crew, and I don't know, it's a gift. I don't know how else to explain it. I just had this ability to disseminate numbers, understand statistics and things like that. And Ike put me on his stats crew for the Kansas City Omaha Kings, for college basketball that came into town. Just about anything that happened in Kansas City, I was on the stats crew. And that's where I found this love for numbers. And then couple that with 1976, I get put in a room at Royal Stadium with Keith Jackson. I mean, here I am sitting in a room with Keith Jackson and Jerry Klein, who's his researcher, and there were no computers. All we had were scorebooks and logbooks, and I'm supposed to get Keith Jackson up to speed to do the 76 playoffs for ABC Sports. And we sit in this room and just start firing numbers, and I'm doing all this before a calculator. I mean, this is the dark ages. Sporting News put out a book of averages. You had to thumb, instead of doing long division, you just thumb through this book, and you did, 93 divided by, or 274 divided by 93. And there was a page that had that number on it. And so anyway, fast forward to 77, Keith's football statistician walked away to take a job as the PGA commissioner. So that's a pretty good step forward for him. And Keith called me and asked if I'd be interested in being his football statistician. And I thought it was a practical joke, when I got the message to call Keith. And it was. And I called the number back, and I got the hello. And I'm like, this really is Keith Jackson. And he asked me if I would be at Pitt Notre Dame the next Saturday for my first game with him. And I worked with him for 5 years. And then CBS got control of most of the NCAA games and NCAA basketball. And Terry O'Neill was the producer. And Terry called, our executive producer, and he called me and said, look, he says, I'm willing to offer you up to 60 events a year if you'd like to come over and work for us and do the A game on football, the A game on basketball, and some NBA and stuff like that. Not knowing I was going to end up in the NFL. That's a whole other story. But I called Keith, and I said, Keith, this is really hard for me because I've been offered this deal over at CBS. And Keith says, Swanee, you do 14 games a year for me. He goes, let me tell you, if you don't take this job, I will fire you, and then you'll be out of work completely. And when he told me that, I mean, I couldn't help but, thank him. And the next thing I know, I'm doing college football and college basketball over at CBS, and I get a call from a producer asking me to if I would join Pat Summerall and John Madden on a Sunday afternoon in Philly for a NFC playoff game between the Giants and Eagles. And I go, sure, I guess. I got a basketball game on Saturday, wherever it was. And he says, well, that's fine. He says, just get to Philadelphia and come to the booth. It's okay. And it turned out John was having a tough time. John doesn't like to be touched. I mean, he's just, to his defense, how many people like to be touched, I guess would be the question. But John's a large man, and he was always getting tapped on the shoulder by the stats guy or whoever was before me. And they said, you've worked Monday Night Football, you've worked with Keith, you've done this. Can you deal with John and Pat? And I said, yeah, I guess, Went in and did the game, no incidents, no problems. I get a call from Pat toward the end of the week. He says, hey, and to sit here and say I got a call from Pat Summerall just sounds stupid to say that. But I get a call from Pat Summerall saying, hey, John and I were talking. We'd like you to do the Super Bowl with us in Pontiac in a couple of weeks. I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever, cool. I got a basketball game at DePaul that Saturday. So you can get from Chicago to Detroit, no problem. So I went in and did the Super Bowl and ended up being with those guys for 3 years. And then baseball got back in the way, and the stats thing kind of went on the back burner. But as you alluded to it, because of friends you make in a business, I did 23 Maui invitationals, and, I was able to go to Maui on ESPN's dime. Mm-hmm. And when I ultimately got married and we had a child, I go do 3 days of basketball in the gym, and then we'd spend 7 or 8 days out there hanging out, and you get to take the family, all expenses paid, because somebody's paying you to be there. And it's been a heck of a run. Crazy.
I mean, it's amazing too, because everything you just described, Pat Summerall, Keith Jackson, Super Bowls, college basketball, college football, Monday Night Football, that's a full career in itself. And we're not even talking about the baseball. And so I think before I get to my baseball theme questions, I want to wrap with this question that, you're in San Diego. I'm guessing all 4 of your stops were very different, because San Diego is pretty still early in your career. Then the next 2 stops, Colorado and Arizona, are startups. I mean, that's you're and a lot of my audience is involved in the entrepreneurial world and startups. And so I think that there's something they can relate to that. And then you come back home to Kansas City. And of course, we know a world championship and everything that's come with that. But I'm just curious what it was like to start something new in Colorado and in Arizona, new franchises, the Rockies and the Diamondbacks, where you've got a chance then as a media relations expert, I'll use that word, to create something.
It is literally, everything I've just reeled off to you has been cool, but it's literally the coolest thing you can do when you do what I do for a living. To get an opportunity to set your parameters, to set the staff as you wanted to. I mean, when I was hired in Colorado, I was hired in January of '92. We had a year to go before we even had players. We didn't draft until November of that year, the expansion draft. All we had was the first, the June draft, and we went to Bend, Oregon to watch our rookie league team play, and it was televised back to Denver. That's how much interest there was in Denver. Wow. for baseball. But I was asked to we were getting ready to throw shovels in the ground where Coors Field now stands. And I was asked to go to some major league parks to look at their infrastructure and come back with notes. And I just so happened to be in a city right now, which was my first stop, because Camden Yards had just opened. And I came to Camden Yards and I said, I don't need to go to any more cities. This is what I think Coors Field, from an infrastructural standpoint, from a PR standpoint, from a press box to accesses to the things you want for baseball. This is what you want. And fortunately, the same people who built Coors Field, who are the same people who live in Kansas City now under the name of Populous, but HOK, and a friend of mine was also the principal at HOK and still is. I brought back to Colorado a notepad full of things. And if you go to Coors Field and close your eyes for a second and just see where you are visually, mentally, there's a lot of Camden Yards in it. The large press box, the low press box, the photo bays, the things that we need to do our jobs from a PR perspective. And Camden was kind of the model, if you will, for what we were looking for. And Coors Field became one of the most beautiful ballparks in Major League Baseball, and still is. The only difference is, if you notice in Camden Yards, where there's stands built in left field, that was built opposite at Coors Field so that you can sit in the stands and see the Rocky Mountains. There's no Rocky Mountains to look at in Baltimore. So, they didn't have any problem reversing that. But it's just, to be able to do it once and then to have a chance to do it again, it's another pinch me moment. I mean, if you're ever given a chance, and for your entrepreneurial group, they know this. If you're given a chance to start something up in the way that you want to do it, and whatever flaws or mistakes I may have made, in round one, and you go, oh man, I wished I'd have done this different, or I wish, now you get to do it again. And it's so cool. And to watch anything, whether it's your children, anything at all, to watch start from the ground up and grow, and to do that in Major League Baseball, to be completely devoid of athletes. And then all of a sudden in one draft, you've got athletes. Then you start drafting your amateur athletes and making them professionals. And to watch the organizations grow into championship caliber clubs, you can't do anything that's more fun in our sport.
So one more before the baseball theme questions. This is my favorite and least favorite question all in one, because in my mind it changes all the time, but I'm sure you get asked it over and over again, favorite stadium. And so let's just take Kauffman Stadium out of it, because I never think it's fair to ask somebody to rate their own home versus someone else's. It's just, you see it differently. But of the other 29, did you go to Texas this year?
I didn't. It's my first one that it's unfortunate, because that would have been my 58th stadium in my career, but I'm going to have to stick on 57 now.
All right, you'll get there at some point, I'm sure. But okay, at least the other 28 then. I suppose it could be one that's not around anymore. Do you have a favorite?
I think Camden is probably going to rank right up there at the top, and Coors Field. As a baseball person, to be able to go to Dodger Stadium, because it's Dodger Stadium, if you fall in love with the sport of baseball, T-Mobile up in Seattle. You know what? No, I don't have a favorite, because I get started reeling off places. I'm not a huge fan of the dome stadiums, because there's just a lack of character, if you will, or personality in those, because they have to put a lid on them. I worked for 9 years in Chase Field / Bank One Ballpark, and the reason it was so great was because it was functional, because it was 1,000 degrees down there, and we needed some for air condition the fans and keep people wanting to be interested to come to the ballpark. And was it the most attractive or beautiful ballpark in the baseball? No, but it was very functional and necessary. But all the new stadiums, Petco. I say new, they're not new anymore, but to me, Petco is, after spending 7 years at Jack Murphy Stadium. But the ones that you worked in personally are the ones, it's like trying to pick a favorite kid. You can't,
That's right. Yeah. And I always tell people that I love Fenway, but that's a catch-22, because it's a really difficult place to work. And so, guys like you and I, and those of us men and women in the business, we tend to like the ones that make work easier, not harder, versus fans that may rate it based on the food or the sight lines, because we don't experience that. But I want to throw this out there just because it's funny. My first year at 08, so it's my first year with the Royals, first year with you, and I'm sitting next to you in the press box at Fenway Park. If you don't remember this, you will in a second. And the start time for the game was 12:30 or 1:30, which is rare and always throws a little bit of a wrinkle, because we're used to a start time at the top of the hour. So it's like a 1:30 afternoon game, which means the pregame show should start at 1. But in my mind, I was on autopilot. And so the game's at 1, or the game, whatever it was, like 12:31. And so I'm ready to go down there in a little bit. And it's, 12:57, the show starting in 3 minutes. And my producer texts, "Where are you?" And I turn to you and I go, "What does he want me down there for so early?" Or like,
I remember this.
Same thing. And I had to do like the O.J. Simpson run through the airport, because this is the problem with Fenway. The elevator only takes you so far. And I am elevator down to the concourse, sprinting through the narrow, tiny aisles and getting down and landing in the seat as the music is starting for the show. And I think you're just sitting there looking and laughing like, I wondered what was wrong.
I may have said something like rookie, or something like that.
Well, I'm sure you did. You're right.
AL rookie.
I was wondering.
AL rookie. No, And you know what? I reel off all these ballparks, and I'm an idiot for not saying Wrigley and Fenway, because if you're a historian,
They're different, though.
Yeah, they are. But I have cherished every time I've gotten to go to Wrigley Field and every time I've gotten to go to Fenway. And, I think they don't jump to my attention immediately. The ballpark themselves, the ambiance, but I'm kind of selfish to where I have to watch the game from. And, the view in Fenway isn't the greatest. It's not maybe the greatest press box, if you will. And Wrigley's kind of the same thing, but everything else about those ballparks, just because if you love the sport, you can't not love those two places.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was a 12:30 game, not a 12:30 pregame. I think I'm still catching my breath 14 years later, but somehow made it. All right, the baseball theme questions throughout this whole storied career. What's your biggest home run? What's your big moment?
Man, Joel, I'm going to guess you get a pause like this every time.
Especially with those that have many moments.
It's really hard. And you know what? She'll kill me when I say this, but the fact that at 42 years old and in a life that was surrounded by nothing but baseball and the stats jobs and everything, and I didn't have time to really consider having a personal life. But my home run, quite frankly, was finding a woman like Renee that wanted to put up with this lifestyle and bless me with a child, Rachel. And this isn't I've got to get their names in type moment. That's not it at all. It is strictly the fact that I was able to manipulate my baseball and statistical and professional world and still be able to have a life away from it, because I can't pick one moment. I mean, how easy would it be to say my 2 World Series rings and the one in my hometown? How easy would it be to say, I get assigned the Dominicans, as you alluded to earlier, and in 2013 we win the WBC, and this American is standing in the middle of the Dominican clubhouse celebrating with a bunch of guys who are singing songs that I've never heard in my life and things like that. There's so many things from a professional aspect.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that I've been able to be a husband and a father in this crazy world of professional sports is literally going to be my home run.
And that's a great answer. And while I try to steer some of my guests away from that, because otherwise we get the wife answer for every single home run question, I know as much as anyone that this business, and you got married later, but this business will either eat you alive or can eat a marriage and a family. And if somehow you stay in it and you stay with your family, that's a blessing. It's not easy to do. Well,
I will turn this seriousness into humor because that's the only way I have to deal with stuff. But I dated all through my previous, before I met Renee, world, and literally by the All-Star break, anybody I was dating at the time said, "Yeah, this is your hours. This is what you do." Yeah, I don't think so. And that's fine. At least we knew that it wasn't going to work. And then the night of the strike in 1994 was literally the night I met Renee with some friends of hers. And we got to date all through the strike. I mean, all winter long, there wasn't much going on except cantankerous negotiations and, nastiness in the newspapers and stuff, which I had nothing to do with. And we got to do things and go places. And I was doing the Maui tournament. And she's like, "Holy crap, who's this guy that, he's known me 3 months and he takes me to Maui and all this." And, at the All-Star break in 95, she's still around and beyond the All-Star break. And I'm like, "Look, bro, if you're going to ever, this is a conversation with myself. If you're ever serious about having a relationship and getting married, this better be the time you do it." And, when I asked her to marry me, I'm sure she's sitting there thinking, "Wait a second, you're gone 8 months out of the year. And when you're home, you take me to Hawaii and other warm weather places and things like that." "Yeah, sure, I'll marry you." And then she blessed us with a child, and the rest is history. And the coolest thing is our daughter is the son that I'll never have because she is such a sports fan, and so it's worked out better than I ever would have dreamed.
Yeah, pretty awesome. And somehow Susan still puts up with it too. She's going to start asking me why I'm not taking her to Hawaii. So I hope she's not listening to this. But
Well,
you know,
I will say this. I did check our vows, and 24/7 Swanee was never in the vows. So me retiring may change some things a little bit. We'll find out. Check back with me in a year and see how that's going.
I'm going to check with Renee is what I'm going to do and
Yeah.
see how that's going
Yeah.
for her.
See how that's going.
Yeah. Oh boy. How about a swing and a miss? Something that you missed on, and I know you're going to say you've missed on a lot. We all have, but something that you swung and missed on and learned from.
Not a lot of people know this because they think I've had this super successful, crazy life. But I got fired in San Diego in 1990, and they had new ownership come in. Tom Werner and a pack of San Diego businessmen bought the team, and anybody who shook Jack McKeon's hand, who was the person who brought me on board in San Diego, he and Bill Beck, anybody who shook his hand was let go at the end of the season. And
Wow.
I was actually interviewed by Sports Illustrated, and there were 31 of us fired. So I called it the Baskin-Robbins Massacre. And fortunately, I mean, I consider that a swing and a miss because you never want to get shown the door. One of the reasons why I'm retiring, because I want to beat him to it, if there's ever any thought. And I don't think there's any danger here of that, but I just, you never know. And so it always hurts that that's on my resume, but the next pitch I connected pretty well because I get invited to interview with Colorado. And the first thing that the president of the team said to me was, look, we know what happened in San Diego, and we consider that an aberration. We want you. And I thought, okay. So, I did swing and miss, but then I feel like I hit a home run with the next pitch. So, but that to me is always going to be a negative. You hate the F word when it comes to firing, and to be unceremoniously dumped. I mean, even Tony Gwynn, God love him, went to bat for me. And it was his first ever swing and a miss, literally, because he the greatest hitter ever went to bat for me, and he couldn't even, help me out. So it's one of those things.
Yeah. Last one is Smallball, and I'll give you the very short version of how this evolved for me. And I don't know that I've ever told you this, but in 2007, my last year in St. Louis, we're playing the Royals. We're at Kauffman Stadium, and I saw Dayton Moore, or maybe I'd set it up through you, I don't know, to get a soundbite about Adam Wainwright because he had drafted him, and it was great pregame material for our Cardinal show. But I also had an ulterior motive that I knew that this job was opening, that Fox was taking over the Royals, and I thought maybe if I could shake hands with this man, not that he's going to vouch for me, but I'm trying to plant some seeds here. And I remember saying to Dayton, the Royals still a longtime GM, what are you trying to do here? And he said, I'm trying to build a championship culture. And I probably in the back of my head said, oh, good luck with that. I mean, the Royals weren't a very good team. And how do you do that? And that's kind of become the crux of my speaking career and this whole other side business, which happened accidentally 4 years ago. And I had no idea what I was doing and didn't know if I could do something like this. And I'm talking to David Glass, the Royals late owner, at a Christmas party. And he says, Joel, what have you been up to? And I said, I'm doing this speaking thing. He goes, what a great idea. Let me help you with that. And what? And so this all started to build. And I started taking these lessons of small ball because, from a baseball standpoint, how did the Royals win? By doing all these little things right that were overseen by other teams, that were skipped, and yeah, they could hit home runs, but the bunts, the sacrifice. And to me, it wraps up everything we were talking about before, the way you treat people, all these little elements that could build a good staff, a culture. So it's a lot. I don't know if I've ever really spelled it out to you that way or shared that with you, but I've learned so much from Dayton Moore, from David Glass, that has applied to life. And David Glass always said that you do everything in life through people, whether that's in sports, business, whatever it is. And I think back, like, how often did you ever hear David Glass say me or I?
No. True.
Never. And, you even said to me once, I remember asking you my first year, because you had experience with this. I said, how do you wear this championship ring? And you said, well, you put the KC facing out so other people can enjoy it. That's a piece of my speech. I'm giving something away all the time now because it's a reminder that, you could bask in your own glory or you could turn it around and make it about everyone else. Very, very, very long way. But I knew that this would resonate with you. of asking you, what is small ball to you?
Well, small ball to me, I've got to go all the way back to the late 60s, early 70s. I talked about my parents, and especially, my mom and her work in both baseball and the NFL with the Chiefs. But I had, as every kid has an opportunity to make good and bad decisions. I was watched every day by the likes of Buck Buchanan, Willie Lanier, Jim Lynch, Bobby Bell, Curly Culp, Len Dawson, Ed Podolak. How far you want me to go? Jim Tyre, Ed Buddy. I mean, I couldn't screw up if I wanted to, because they weren't going to go to the front of the building and tell my mom that I was a pain in the butt. They were going to fix it themselves. And I mean, here I am, high school age, have an opportunity to make good or bad decisions. And I had a dad. I mean, my dad was a good dad. He was a hard dad, back in the pre-politically correct era. I got my butt whacked a few times and, grounded, suspended, whatever you want to look at, from doing something stupid around the house or not doing my chores. But then I had guys who I was around every day cleaning their uniforms and jerseys. And Joel, it taught me a level of respect that I haven't lost. And I will never forget those days. And in my mind, that's my small ball, because I could have turned into a real turd, because I could have been this guy who, oh yeah, I'm washing the uniforms and traveling with the Kansas City Chiefs and beating my chest and stuff. And these guys wouldn't let me be that way. And I will be forever indebted to them, because I was small. I was nowhere near established in life. And I will, here I am 67 years old, and you ask me that question, it's the first thing that comes to mind, is that people like that kept me on the straight and narrow. And I felt like I would disappoint somebody if I turned into a tool, as they say in the business. So,
and I will just say, I'm not giving away secrets here, that when you see Swanee out for a pop on the road, and it's usually just one, might be two or three for me, but when you see Swanee out on the road, it's almost always with the equipment guys and the clubhouse guys. And so in many ways, that's never changed.
Yeah, it never has. And it's not, it's weird. It's not necessarily by design or anything. It's just a comfort level that I've grown to have, because I was one of them once. My goodness, I hate even saying this, 50 years ago. That sounds like an awful long time. It was 50 years ago.
It's all relative. All right, I have four final questions as we round the bases. The first one, and I'm not trying to give you a Roy Firestone moment here. If it goes there, I'll take the blame for it too. But I remember my first fan fest before I'd really started working here. So it would have been January of 2008. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your daughter Rachel's birthday is a January birthday. It's either late January or 17th. Late January. Yeah. Okay, so this would have been 2008. I remember being on stage. I think it was the Overland Park Convention Center at that point, and Ryan Lefevre had us all sing "Happy Birthday" to a young Rachel Swanson in the front row. And now she's in her 20s and she's in the business. And you alluded to the fact that, it's like having that son. And I've watched her tag along isn't even the right word anymore. I mean, she's an emerging potential star, I think. I mean, that has to be just the coolest, most amazing thing to see your daughter, who's a phenomenal person, have an interest in this.
It's stunning. I mean, there are so many directions that she could go with her life, because she's way smarter than her old man is, and way more technologically savvier than her old man. And yet, I'll get a text. I mean, I'll get a text in the middle of a ball game. Can you believe what Salvi's doing? I mean, she could be doing anything but watching our game, and that's what she does. And I get a text from her when we were in Seattle a few weeks ago, because she's working in the press box for the Chiefs on game days. And she says, "Dad, you have no idea how happy I am to be back in the press box." And those are the things that bring tears to the old guy's eyes, because, she could have done anything. She could have gotten an education to do anything that she wanted. And she took sport management over at KU, graduated early, and she wants to be in sports. Now, I'm not positive she wants to be in baseball. I'm not even sure she's positive, but I know she wants to work in sports. And you know what? With the resume I have, with all the sports, whether it's been statistician or games I've worked or teams I've worked for or whatever, just the fact that she wants to be in athletics in some form, I mean, you can't ask for a better legacy, in your family than to have her love that. And it makes an old guy feel good. I mean, when we went over to Maui after I quit doing the stats for the tournament, here's a girl, and she didn't fall too far off the mom tree either. I mean, she loves her son and her water and, laying out on the beach and stuff like that and getting raised. But even she would say, hey, KU's playing at 1:00 today. Can we get tickets? And, so we went and watched Carolina and Wisconsin. Wisconsin. We went and watched Carolina and Wisconsin one year over there because she wanted to go see the game. And it cost her severe beach time, but she wanted to go to the game. And that's, that's not anything you lay out in the plans, but I couldn't be more happy.
Yeah. It's been fun to watch her grow up from a distance, a bit of a distance. Second question as we round the bases. You've met 1 million people in baseball. It's a slight exaggeration, not much though. Is there someone from yesteryear, or even, I'm guessing you've met anybody of significance that's alive that you wish you would have had the opportunity? I mean, I wish I would have had the opportunity to meet Buck O'Neil, and I missed him by a couple of years. But who's one that got away?
Wow. I've been just silly fortunate. I mean, I've gotten to host a luncheon with Hank Aaron.
Maybe this is the answer.
I got to go because my mom was with the A's at the time. I got to go see, I was a child. Well, not a child. I was 8 years old, 10 years old, whatever it was. I got to go see Satchel Paige. Never actually got to meet him. But, being from Kansas City, that would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Joel, that's a hard one because I just don't know that I've been cheated on that,
Yeah. Well, or blessed. And maybe the greater answer is you were able to mention meeting Hank Aaron and at least getting close to Satchel Paige. So, that's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah.
That's the problem with this interview is you've done so much that like the best ofs and the favorites are impossible, because I could have done that for favorite player, favorite this, favorite manager, favorite on and on. And it's just like, it's not an exercise that would be productive. We'd go in circles for too long, which is again, a testament to your longevity and everything and everyone that you've met. So I'll go to my third question as we round the bases. A little word association, 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, a sentence. I'm not going to restrict you to one, but I want to throw a few guys out there. And then afterwards, you can tell me if I'm missing anybody, but these are off the top of my head. When I say the name Tony Gwynn, you think what?
Greatest pure hitter I've ever been around. Greatest individual you would ever want in your clubhouse. The first true student of the game. I mean, I know this is a longer answer, but you watch George Brett. You watch George Brett hit. George just it was all reflex for him. And I mean, he was just a great hitter based on reflex and what he saw. Tony Gwynn is the reason, the legitimate reason why we have video in our sport, because he actually traveled a reel to reel. This was, again, people don't understand, what a VCR used to be, and he traveled a reel to reel and put it on the plane and sat there and watched video of himself. And I one night asked him over a cerveza, I said, why you? What? And he, and you know what? He gave me a secret that I still do to this day. When something happens that I have to, something that I have to act, and I have to act fast. And, the thing that jumps to my mind immediately is the untimely passing of Yordano Ventura. But there have been other things too that have happened in my career. And Tony told me, for some reason, when the ball leaves the pitcher's hand, he has this ability to put it in slow motion in his brain. And the pitch may be coming in at 94, but he has this ability. And I have always been able to do that with my job is, okay, I can either freak out right now, or take 15 seconds and figure out step by step by step, and then freak out, and that's what I try to do. It's something he told me, gosh, 35 years ago, and it stuck with me.
Yeah. And served you well in tragic moments like Yordano Ventura's passing. And that's life. I mean, we were all devastated by that. And then you got to work, you got to go out there and do it. You got to go out there, in my case, and do a 30-minute show about Paul Splittorff. And
yeah.
we I don't know if you remember, we were in Baltimore when he passed, and I was set to go to you were helping me out, set to go to Wilmington to interview some of the minor league players. That's when I knew I was old, by the way, when I met Jake Odorizzi. He goes, I used to watch you in St. Louis when I was a kid. Oh, thanks a lot. But, and then a day later or 2 days later, we're doing a tribute and we're going on the air and you're talking about your partner. And it's like, man, got to figure out a way. The show goes on. So,
I was on my way to the rental car counter because I was going to Wilmington. They were playing a noon game that day.
Yeah. You were going with us, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And
we were going with you.
I was on my way to get the car, and the hotel phone rang, which never happens anymore because we all have cells, and it was Len Splittorff. And I just I dropped to my knees, and and the rest, we lived it.
Yeah. That's 10 years ago. I remember it now because you said, look, something like you guys should still go, but you might have even given us the rental car, but I can't go. I've got so. Randy Johnson.
Complicated but cool. He and I got along actually pretty well, and but complicated because he would overthink things sometimes. Like the day he unfortunately killed the bird. I try to say that with some sense of understanding that something lost its life that day, but it's been played and replayed over and over. But to go see Randy after he came out of the game and tell him that people are going to ask him about it, and him to say, well, I don't want to talk about that. I don't, it's not anything. He was just, he was complicated in a sense. He tried to overthink things sometimes and made my job a little complicated. But the bottom line was he was pretty cool dude, and loved to be the dominant soul that he was, and loved the aura of being Randy Johnson, and that made us all love him too.
So you had a Cy Young Award winner in Randy Johnson.
Four times.
Yes. You had the hit king or the batting average champion and longtime all-star and good guy Tony Gwynn. I could throw a million names at you, but let's go to Kansas City. When I say Alex Gordon, what do you think?
Alex Gordon was literally, Joel, of the God knows how many hundreds/thousand of players that I've had. He was the one guy who outworked everybody. Mm-hmm. All of them. I mean, you mentioned Randy Johnson, you mentioned Tony Gwynn. I mean, Tony was a great hitter and worked his butt off on hitting, but he didn't exactly push himself away from the dinner table at night either. And Alex was the most intense individual regarding his body and how he was going to work every day to make sure he maintained that. I'll never forget a day in Seattle. They have a soft serve ice cream machine in the clubhouse there. And I'm sitting by the locker on the way out the door, finishing off, I think, my second ice cream cone of the afternoon. And Alex goes walking by and he stops and looks at me. And I said, come on, one time, Alex, one time, have one of these. He goes, nope. I said, never? He goes, never. I think that's been broken now that he's retired. A
little bit.
I'd like to think he's had one now, but it was just so funny, the commitment he had and the tone of voice that he had, like, no, I ain't never touching one of those. But he just
I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say, I think the story might have been after that or whatever was his blood sugar was down one year in Seattle, and so he had to have it. I think that was the one time, and it might have been after that, and he liked it, but he still wouldn't go back to it.
Yeah, I think it was after that, but yeah, it was he was and you know, on the coolometer right there at the top of the list.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just a cares so much about human beings, cares so much about people and family. I mean, it's just everybody should aspire to be Alex Gordon.
Yep. He's my favorite among many, 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 in part because not everybody knew all of what we saw. They didn't know bad. I mean, they didn't see bad. They just didn't know because he didn't let a whole lot of people in on it. There were no bad moments.
Whatever outs he made, and fans may not have liked an out with the bases loaded in the third inning of a game or whatever, they have no idea how much effort was put into being in that situation.
Yeah.
You know, and I can, you know, hits come and sometimes hits don't come, but the amount of work that he put in to put himself in those situations, off the charts.
All right, I could go on and on forever. I want to give you two more quick ones. Salvador Perez.
Happiest person in the world. He is literally, if fans think that they are just blessed to have Salvador Perez in Kansas City and they think that he's the most fun, coolest dude that they've ever seen put on a uniform, they're right. There is no there's nothing fake about Salvador Perez. He all you have to do if you're at Kauffman Stadium and you're watching him catch a game, if you're anywhere and you're watching him catch a game, the interactions he has with players coming to the plate is worth paying attention to. Mm-hmm. I mean, guys come up to him and ask him how he's doing, and he'll put his arm around guys before he's trying to get them out. I mean, that's a man who loves life, loves the sport, and loves the people who play it, and respects every person that steps into that batter's box. And yet he can't wait, if you get to first base, to throw your fanny out at second and then laugh about it when it's over with. But that's just who he is. He's a great competitor, but he's also just a great human, great fan, great person.
Yeah. Last one, and I don't, without cheating any other managers, but he's the guy I was around the longest, and I think probably the most for you because it was the better part of 10 seasons with Ned Yost and a world championship. A truly unique individual. I find text messages I send him get better responses now than any question I ever asked him. And there was never a bad day for me with Ned. He could have made it a lot easier on a lot of us, but it was never, ever, ever personal in my mind. I didn't need to be buddies with him.
No,
you just had to jump through hoops. He just, from my side, would be happy if he never had to do anything in media. It wasn't personal. It came with it. So Matheny's easier to deal with from that standpoint because he chooses to get it more. Doesn't mean he likes it more.
No.
But yet I smile when I think about Ned. I don't know. I think it's the sense of humor. I think a little bit of distance. Again, it was never a bad thing for me, but I just find myself appreciating him, not missing him, just appreciating him more now. I mean, I'd love it if he was here. I'd catch up. I send him messages and he sends messages back with exclamation points, which I'm taking as some form of enthusiasm. I don't know. How would you describe Ned?
Well, you know, several points on him. I mean, first and foremost, he sends me texts now that he found out that I'm retiring. You're going to love it in all caps, you know. It's the greatest thing ever. And, you know, he's one of the few that are really endorsing my retirement just to see me enjoy life, I guess, in his mind. Semi-complicated individual because when he first started, he was a challenge. You know, didn't necessarily want to do the media stuff, but he knew he had to. And I think one of the running jokes we had behind his back was somebody would ask a question, even you would ask him a question about, you know, you had runners at first and second. Did you ever think about maybe moving them over or something like that? Not necessarily a second guess or something. And he would start every answer. If you let on to know something about baseball that you thought he didn't know, or that your answer might be better than his he would start the answer off with no. He'd start the answer to every question with no. And then by the end of his long-winded answer, he'd be right back on the same page you were on. And we would laugh about that. And
Every
finally,
time.
about 15 or 16, I finally said something to him, and that was a long time into his tenure. And I said, the word no comes out of your mouth with the answer of any question. He goes, no, it doesn't. I said, oh, yeah. I said, you want some tapes? I said, let me go get some tapes. He goes,
Oh my God.
I go, yeah. And we laugh about it now. But, the neatest thing about Ned, several points, but, he wasn't going to, while the city of Kansas City went absolutely crazy that we won that game in Chicago on Friday night in 2014.
Yep.
Look, he was happy that we were qualifying to play more baseball, but he was not accepting us being in the playoffs until we beat the A's. Mm-hmm. And then when we got to Anaheim with no sleep, but we got to Anaheim and did that first press conference, it was a completely changed Ned Yost, because he was taking questions and felt like we've accomplished something now. Now let's accomplish more. But he was very comfortable in his own skin and in our organization's skin, knowing that where we were when he took the job and where we were that day in Anaheim were two completely ends of the spectrum, completely different ends of the spectrum. And he took a lot of pride in that. And, I could tell you so many Ned stories. I will tell you one. So we lose game 5 in San Francisco. And Ned has got to do the first post-game press conference. Losing manager has to go press conference. Well, in San Francisco, you can't walk the tunnel to the interview room because fans are actually allowed in that tunnel. They're coming out of those field seats. So we had to go across the field, and Madison Bumgarner, who had shoved that night, was just finishing up all his on-field interviews. So we're heading into the dugout to go up their tunnel to go to the interview room because it was over on their side of the field. And as we go into the dugout, Madison Bumgarner is about 10 feet in front of us, and Ned goes, "Hey, kid. And Bumgarner totally blows him off because he thinks it's just some, Joe Bag of Donuts yelling at him. And he goes, "Hey, Madison." And finally, kind of with a disturbed look, he looks behind him. He says, "Oh, I'm sorry." He says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Yost. I didn't realize that was you. I apologize." He goes, and Ned says, "Look, I just want to tell you a hell of a job. You pitched your butt off tonight." He says, "Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that." He says, and Madison says to him, he says, "I hear you're a big hunter." He goes, "Yeah, love to hunt." He says, "Maybe we should go hunt sometime." "Yeah, that'd be fun." And then Ned goes to him, and I'll just never forget this line. He goes, "Man, I'm sure glad you went the distance tonight because I don't want to see you anymore in this series." And and Madison just kind of smirked a little bit and then walked up the tunnel. And then I think 3 days later, when he came out in whatever it was, the third or fourth inning, and shoved again, and we didn't touch him the rest of the ball game. Yeah. And lost the World Series. And all I could think about was that conversation Ned had with him. But Ned was being cute, and he got popped on it. But and the only other thing about Ned was, if you wanted to see his eyes light up, let him go on his iPad and look at new pictures of his grandchildren.
Grandkids, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's, what, for any faults people have or any issues you might have with somebody, just because they can be cantankerous or hard to deal with at times or whatever, watch how they react to family, and especially grandkids. Their kids are grandkids. And all of a sudden, you know what? This guy's got a heart of gold. And that's all I ever cared about with Ned, was I knew he had a heart of gold.
Yeah. I've got good memories, and I do smile. Like, Ned, how beautiful of a day is it today? Not a cloud in the sky. Yes, there is. Or the no, it's not. It's a beautiful day. I mean, whatever it was, it would always come back to what you were saying. And
if you walked in his office and said your lights are bright, he'd go over and check the switch. He'd be like, "They're not even on."
One year at Fenway, we'll wrap this up. But one year at Fenway, Jeff Foxworthy, is good buddies with him, and so I asked Foxworthy to come on the pregame show, and he does. And Ned goes, "What are you doing? Leave him alone, Joel. He's here to enjoy himself." And I go, "If you'd rather do it," he goes, No, he's fine. He can do it. That's fine. I knew that would shut him up real quickly.
Exactly.
And anyone but me. Final question, the walk-off. What does the perfect day in retirement look like for you in your mind right now?
Oh, pick a golf course. I want to get my body as healthy as I can from surgeries and such, and play golf. Literally spend time with my wife and daughter that I've not gotten to spend with them over 26 years of marriage and almost 23 years of having a daughter. I was telling somebody the other day that if you remember the song by Harry Chapin, Cats in the Cradle, we've had a Cats in the Cradle life. I mean, my daughter, I'm sure, wanted to do some things. She's gotten to do a lot because of the old man's job, but I think there are other things she would like to have done or maybe around for, and I just wasn't. And now we're reaching the flip side where I'm going to be retired, and I'm going to ask her if she wants to do something. She goes, Dad, I got to work today, or, my friends and I are going to go out. And that's not going to be all that much fun to be told no, but I'm hoping that we can find time to be a family and hang out. And that'll be, it sounds very simplistic, but as you've known me over 14 years, I'm actually a pretty simplistic person. And so, cold beer on the deck with a smoker going, and just got home from 18 holes of golf and having dinner on the deck with my family. Can't have a better day than that. So that's kind of the goal in life.
It sounds pretty good. 43 years just on the baseball side. And I've been lucky and fortunate enough to have 14 of them with you. I could thank you over and over again, but we'll do that at a different time. But, look, this all comes down to people and relationships. Hopefully, I've been able to help you a little bit with that, where you ask for a guy to come and talk to me, and it's like, and there are going to be those moments too. I get it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's an easier day for them to not talk to us than to talk to them, but you've made it so much easier for them and for me. And it's just, boy, it makes my job so much easier, because it's not that way everywhere else. It really isn't. And that. And so
I appreciate it. It takes an army to do what we do. And it takes being honest with the player and explaining to them that it's very important that the fans hear from them. You can say all you want about a player. I can say all I want about a player. Ryan, Rex, Denny, Steve, they can all say all they want about a player, Monty. But fans can be cynical, and they don't know, if you're telling the truth. But if they hear from the player himself, and that's always been my goal, to make that player accountable, responsible, and have him talk. And even if it's in a great situation, when it's a post-game win, a post-game interview after a win, or if it's a tough one that you have to do a pregame show with somebody that, things might not have been as rosy as you want them to be. Yep. It is what it is. But I just feel like if the fans get to know the player better, there's always a better chance they're going to like the player.
Yep. I know that's my role. It's your role to make it happen among many, 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 many others, at least for a little bit longer, but not too much longer. So, Swanee, congrats. Thanks for doing this. I knew we'd go long. We could have gone 5 more hours. And so that's yet another reason that at some point you really should write that book.
We'll see. We'll see.
Just don't put it on the top of the list. You got too many cold beers and smokers and family time and golf, and maybe an occasional baseball game. So, Swanee, I appreciate it. Congrats, and thanks for doing the podcast.
Thank you, Joel. Appreciate having me on. Thank you.